Hey friends, let me tell you, you are in for a treat this week. I have a very special guest on the podcast, and she is literally making waves in the beauty industry. If you've ever struggled with asserting yourself or feeling like you're not allowed to do the things that you've dreamt that you've always wanted to do, or you feel like you're holding yourself back or you're not worth it, well, this episode is definitely for you. Get ready, buckle up. This conversation was so inspirational. It was so much fun. I don't want to give away who it is. You're going to have to wait till after the intro. But I loved having this convo. It was so good. We dove deep. We got vulnerable. We got real about our journeys. Her and I have very similar journeys, and I'm so excited to bring this very special guest to you. She has her own podcast. She has her own studio salon. She's pivoted a lot in her career, which makes her story so special and so relatable. You are going to love it. So get ready. This is an exciting one. Find out who the special guest is right after the intro. I overthink, I overshare, and I overanalyze. So come explore with me as I chat about business, life, and relationships, all through the lens of an anxious creative. All right, welcome to the podcast, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited. So I was a guest on your podcast. If you guys don't know that are listening in or watching this on the YouTube, that's how old I am. Call it the YouTube. Lindsay has an amazing podcast called She Makes Waves. Can you tell everyone a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I started it a little bit over a year ago, and it was like just during a time in my life where I had spent the last year before that just kind of re-evaluating how I work behind the chair and how I actually live my life. And I thought, like, I didn't know that I could like do this and redefine what success looked like. And so then it just kind of became a passion of mine, something I love to share about. So I thought, I was nervous, but I was like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast. And I just got the equipment, took a course, and just brought people on to my show. And that's why you were on, that I felt had really just taken like ownership of their own lives and said, no, you're not going to tell me what success looks like. You're not going to tell me how I'm going to live my life. I'm going to start calling the shots. And so it's just kind of become this just real labor of love for me, where I get to like, it's people I want to connect with. And then I feel like I'm getting to share it with people, help other people. But ultimately it gives me a lot. And then it's just like a bonus that it helps other people.
I love that. And I love your story. And I'm going to ask you about that right away, because there really isn't, when I first got in the industry, which was in 19 years ago, 2001, which makes me feel like a dinosaur. But I remember thinking like the way to success was you get a job, you become an assistant, you become commission, and then you go out on your own and you become a boss and you open up a salon, and that's what success was. And now more than ever, there's unlimited possibilities, and you realizing that like we can call the shots. And I'm curious, like, so you've been a hairstylist 15 years, am I right?
Yeah.
At what point did you start to realize that you had control over what and how your life and your business looked?
Well, it took me a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me, because I was just thinking back as you were talking, and when I got my first job, like I was under the impression at 19, like I am going to have to forego a lot of my personal life to make this happen. And I can like literally put myself back in that place and be like, I was willing to give up my life to do this profession. And I think that like, it's a kind of a side tangent, but I think that we kind of go into this profession operating at a deficit to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you like do that for a long time, and it gets you really good. And I think you always have the best of intentions of implementing your life into it and thinking you're going to have more time, and thinking that once you get going, once you kind of like plateau on this thing, then you're going to be able to like go, oh, I'm going to layer in some things I love. But I think many of us don't actually ever do that. And so but I was willing to, like, if someone was like, sign on the dotted line, like, you don't get to have a family, you don't get any of this stuff, I'd be like, I don't want any of that. I want to be here serving people. And so I think that it took me like almost 12 and a half years and 2 salons that I worked at, and then having my own studio. And it ultimately didn't happen for me where I realized any of this. And I had been my own boss for 4 years. I didn't realize it till my business partnership ended. And then I got to my new studio, was sitting on this couch by myself going, oh my gosh, like what has happened in my life? Like it looks awesome on paper. I had this girl boss partnership and I had this awesome, like high demand career, but like I didn't, and I looked at my personal life. I'm like, why didn't my husband help me move into this place? Like, where's he been? And realizing that I had created this amazing demand for my career, but I hadn't, and I feel like externally and on paper it looked awesome, but internally it hadn't been serving me for a really long time. And I think that that's where the passion lies, because I didn't realize that it sucked as I was living it until like it started crumbling around me. And then it kind of got me inward, and I still wanted everything to work. And then I think until I was like, wait, this partnership hasn't ever maybe served me. Oh my gosh, like I don't even want this marriage anymore. The one that I have, if we can start a new one, cool. But really just surrendering to, is any of this in my life because it's meant to be in my life? Or have I been holding on to everything so tightly that I don't know what's there because it's meant to be there or because I'm forcing it?
Yeah.
And so I think that it just kind of was just a combustion of everything. And then being able to then realize like, holy shit, I've had my own business, but I've been running it I'm like working in a commission salon. Like I had a boss. Like I felt like I didn't really take weekends off. I didn't really like I'm like, who am I answering to? I held myself to this very, very rigid standard. And I think I had a lot of ego too, because it was a fake sense of self-worth that I really got from other people.
We're the same people. Holy cow. So now being on the other side of it, I know it's really inspirational for people to hear like the stories of overcoming it, but so many people will sit and be listening to this right now and being like, I get it, but like how, or like, what can I do now? Because I'm on this hamster wheel that I can't seem to stop. And like, I'm curious to know what your aha moment was. Cause for me, like I crashed and burned multiple times. Like I went through a divorce, it was an unhealthy relationship in and of itself, but me being a workaholic didn't help. I used my work to escape. I stayed at work till 10:30 at night because I was scared to go home. I'd sit in McDonald's drive-through and then park and eat my 2-cheeseburger meal by myself because I was so unhappy, but everything looked really great. And then, you know, that relationship ended, and then I went into work, and then I moved, and then everything, like I was changing all the exterior things and I wasn't working on the interior things. And it wasn't until I ended up in the hospital in August 30th, 2016 that I had my aha moment. How many times did life kind of be like, tap you on the shoulder and be like, it's time? And what did it take for you to kind of go, oh, okay, it is time, I'm listening?
Yeah, I think it was slow because I feel like while we all want everything to be fixed, like by oh, my partnership ending, that should have been the thing that woke me up. But I think it really took a combination of hitting the concrete in that relationship and then hitting the concrete in my personal life. It was like the two identities that I had like hung my hat on. Like I'm a colorist, I have a partner, like she's so awesome, I'm always pumping her up. And then it's like, I'm a wife, like my husband, he's so awesome, I was always pumping him up. I think it was kind of like everything came to a head, but then it was like realizing that I really had to sit with it. And I think the most important thing was getting curious and not being like, oh my God, how do I fix this? Because the things that were happening in my life, they really weren't things that could be fixed overnight. And it was like a lot of faith involved and a lot of just like, you know, like Glennon Doyle says, we all want to pass our pain around like a hot potato and like throw it at someone and be like, oh, not me, I'm not it. But I think what was the most impactful thing that I did is I didn't pretend my life, I mean, I was private, but I didn't pretend that things were awesome. I let it be messy, and I let it myself with people that I could trust be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And like, even just like, I don't know if I want to do hair, or I don't know if I want to move or what I want to do, and I think that a big part of it is the part where it's like really messy and you don't know what it's going to be. And you kind of want to skip over that. But like Glennon Doyle says, the smartest people realize that pain's a traveling professor, and you just like sit down with it. And like, it's kind of cool because you almost get to sift through the rubble of your life and be like, oh, I love this. This is going to be a part of my new life. And like put yourself back together slowly. And then not put things back into your life that didn't bring you joy. And that's why you need to do it slowly, because I think you have to let the dust settle and see what's actually in your life, because it's meant to be there. And I mean, like, it could take a year, it could take a year and a half, but like, to get happy, to get on the right track, like, 12 and a half years I was on that hamster wheel. I can't get off in a day, so
No.
I think it's just a lot of really small changes and prioritizing myself. So like going on a walk, it's worth it, just it sounds like, people are gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna go on a walk and get a new life. But no, you're gonna start to prioritize yourself, and you have no idea like how valuable that is. And I think that like the time that you don't think you're doing anything, you're resting or you're recharging or you're learning about yourself, you're getting curious, like, why do I always let myself down so I can show up for other people? Like really asking yourself those questions.
I love that, because when I even think of, I'm a huge visual learner, and when I think of a hamster on a hamster wheel going, 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 and if they wanted to stop right then and jump off, they're gonna like tumble and do some somersaults because they're going so fast.
It's gonna get weird.
So, yeah, it would get weird, it'd be messy. So there's like two options. You can just like jump off, but you're gonna like do some somersaults and tumble, or you can slow the hamster wheel down and step off. And both are gonna take a lot of learning and patience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
And I abandoned ship. I jumped off and tumbled.
Yeah, I mean, I think either route, you're gonna have like a lot of like, oh, I did that thing that I do again, or like you're gonna screw up, but like it's better to screw up finding your way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I was just chatting with some people earlier today before we recorded this and saying like, no matter what, the one thing I can guarantee you is you're gonna fail. And so get used to failing. Yeah. So knowing what you know now, if you could rewind 15 years to Lindsay when she's walking in on her first day of work, first job at a beauty school, what would you say to her?
Well, I kind of get the opportunity to say it to people, because people will reach out to me after they're done with hair school and they'll be like, I don't know what I want to do, or like, I think I want to work here. And the thing that I say to them is like totally like makes me choked up, but it's like the thing I would say to myself, which like I've said to them is like, like you should go in and like you should sell yourself, but don't forget that you bring a lot to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and I said to someone else, they were like, I want to work at this place, but they only are taking stylists right now. And I know I want to be a colorist. And I was like, well, then you tell them I'd love to work here, but I want to be a colorist. And I think that I would go in, I think the undertone of it would be seeing more of my worth and seeing more of my value. So when I talk to people that are going into it and I see myself in them, I like to tell people like, it's an awesome place to work, but they'd also be lucky to have you. And I don't think
Yeah.
anyone ever really said that to me. So I always felt like in every relationship, in any partnership, in anything, like I was the lucky one. But I think I see now that I've always have brought a lot to the table. And I think that young people or people going in this industry, the kind of people that want to do it, I think they sometimes undervalue themselves. So seeing that you could go in and be like, I want to work here, but also like they should want me to work here because I bring a lot to the table. And so that's what I would say. And that's what I try and say.
I love that. Because like the one thing I remember was like a big moment of me learning something, and something now that I pass on to other people is like, when you go in for a job interview, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. Like if they give it to you and you're flattered, but something feels not right, it's okay to walk away from people offering you a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what your business looks like now.
Yeah. So now I feel like there's been many renditions. And I think that that's one thing like I am proud of myself about is I try a lot of things. It's like, okay, I want to have a commission salon. I want to work with people. Okay. So I get a contract made. I hire people. I have an assistant. I go down a lot of different avenues because I want to figure out where I'm going. And like you said, failing is something that like I'm not afraid to do because it gives me so much rich knowledge of like where I want to go. So, whether it's having an assistant and not having one anymore, the stylist, I feel like I don't regret doing any of that because there's like some people go to business school. I try a lot of different businesses within my business. So I now, current day, am the happiest I've been in my business. And I feel like, again, I attribute it to a lot of things not working. So like 15 years later, I have my own studio. It's right here. And
For those of you watching it on YouTube, if you're listening in, you can go to
yeah,
go to my website, donbradley.com/podcast, and you can watch Lindsay and I's interview. Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. And I have 3 chairs. And so I'm renting, so I've kind of transitioned my space into a studio that I rent out. So really inspired independent stylists can work with me. And I'm there 3 days a week. And I've just been really kind of focused on empowering and helping other stylists. And so like Dawn, you've been helping me to do that. And I think that, you know, it's been something I've been working on for a year, but like back to what I was saying earlier about like not expecting things to happen overnight. Like I've made a lot of content. I've worked on a lot of things. And then I feel like there's this quote I saw that said, sometimes people underestimate the time in between that you have to like integrate what you've learned. So like I've learned all this stuff and then I want to teach it to other people, but then there's this process in between where I actually have to like integrate what I've learned with how I want to teach it. And so nothing's a waste. So the last like year, I've been kind of just like compiling those things. And like, you've been helping me to be like, I do want to be a coach, but I mean, the integration process of knowing what you want to do to admitting it to yourself. It's like, it's all part of the journey so that one day when someone's like, well, that person's an overnight success. It's like, oh my gosh, you didn't see the year where they struggled to admit to themselves what they wanted to actually do and creating things and putting it away and holding on to it. So I'd say now I want to be in the salon like I am 2 to 3 days a week and helping other hairstylists and coaching them and helping them to have the life that I have. Because it's not enough to me to have made my life better. I want to be able to do that for other people.
I love that. I love that so much. I actually just recently put on Instagram a picture. It had the text over it saying the work nobody sees you do. And on behind it was a picture I took on a walk recently in my neighborhood of all the foundational work of this building. Like they had to dig a big, deep hole and it's like all this concrete and all this stuff. And it feels like it's taken forever. And then I don't know if you've ever watched a building go up, but all of a sudden it's like, they're not making any progress. It looks like they're just doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, up. And I think that's what people think is like, they see like the outside work of like the shiny part of the building going up. And it seems to happen really quick and overnight, but it takes months of this foundational work that's like not really ugly and seems like it's not making no progress. But without it, like a storm came through last night, like a building would collapse if it didn't have all this work. But it seems, and I know I've tried to jump the gun on it, is like foundational work seems so annoying because you don't ever see it in the end. You don't really see it. It doesn't make the building look appealing, but it's necessary so it stays standing. And I think that's like where like, you know, like that year of like admitting stuff to yourself or learning, or like the last 15 years of like the learning you've had to do is going to make you that much better of a coach, where, you know, there's lots of people that jump into things knowing the right things to say, but they have no personal experience. And that's like the magic. The other thing that I think is really cool about you is that along every journey, or along your journey at every step of the way, you've sought out people who have been in your shoes where you are at that moment. So walk me through a little bit about that, of how like every step that you've taken, you found someone to kind of been like, hey, I'm a little bit ahead of the path. Come along with me.
Yeah, that's also something that I love to do. I mean, even when I think about the first salon I wanted to work at, like I got obsessed with their website and I was like, that's where I'm working. And I would say that then beyond that, every part of my journey, every time I've moved, every time I made a transition, I've looked out to people that I don't even know are coaches necessarily. And I'm like, hey, do you do any consulting? Because you're doing what I want to be doing, or you have the business that I almost have. I have a couple quarter turns to take. And that's why I've worked with a lot of coaches. And I think that it's also been cool to like get different coaches when I'm in different seasons of my business. So that's something that I feel like more people should do. And I try and say that on my podcast. I'm like, you want to pick someone's brain, pay them, you know, like I also feel like I get this really cool insight. And I think you also have to have a good gut about it. I feel like I've only worked with people that I feel like genuinely have enough self-confidence to not be like, yeah, I'll help you, but I'm going to keep all my secrets to myself. Like, because I think there's a lot of that too. So I think people should be really researching and seeing Like, is this person someone you know someone's worked with? Are they friends with someone that's 2 degrees separated that you really trust? Because I think that that is important, because I think in this industry, there are people that say they want to help you, but they also still want to be looking at you from the top of the mountain, and they don't want actually at the end of the day for you to be sitting next to them. And I think that that is something that I've been really proud of the people that I've chosen to work with, because I've always felt like they're like all hands on deck, whatever I need. I don't ever feel like they're holding back. And you know what I'm talking about, that idea that people are like, no, you're going to be awesome. But you're like, well, I'm going to need a little more than that, you know? Like
The like patting on the head. That's what I always say. Like, that's really cute. Good for you. You're going to do great.
right. And you're like, and you also have to be able to see past the fact that you're like starstruck by someone, or that you're like, oh my God, I'd like to be like close to that person. It's like, really, I think it's trusting that you feel like you can get your needs met from the situation. And that's why I've changed directions, changed coaches, and I've been happy with each one, but each one has been an integral part of that part of my journey.
I love
And
that.
I am not afraid to switch gears.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is like knowing that there's not only one right person for your whole career. There's not one right path for your whole career. There's not one right everything for anything. And I love that your ability to adapt, to shift, and then to also know like, okay, like this served me at this time, and now I'm looking for this to serve me during this time. And then like being able to pivot and know that there's so many different people out there that can help you in so many different ways, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So now you're kind of getting into coaching because you want to help people navigate through what you went through. Is that basically?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about, so She Makes Waves podcast started as a passion project, wanting to share what you've learned. Tell me how it's evolved.
So it's really evolved into me finding more of my voice. And I love having guests on, but like I am kind of loving to like having my own individual episodes where I'm kind of like, today we're talking about people not getting on board with what you're going through. And like it's just very cathartic for me, because I don't have to use anyone's names. I don't have to be like, I don't have to, talk about people, but I find it like thing that think people really like about it is I'm really honest about how, there are people that aren't going to be happy for you. There's going to be clients that don't like that you're getting healthy. There's going to be, and I draw from so much of my own experiences behind the chair, and it actually helps me to process them. And it helps me to not have, I don't know, like to feel like I'm carrying around these burdens. I feel like, oh, wow, you've given my pain purpose because I put it on my show. So I
I
think that
love
it's
that.
evolved into being this really honest platform that I use in service of others, but it also serves me. So it's kind of been something, and then it's been fun to like, have people back on, because like all of our journeys are evolving. So it's like the person that I had on the first time's changed the name of her salon, and she's, and now again, like repivoting her business again. So those are the kinds of people that I have on my show. And so what's interesting is I could honestly probably just have the same, and I don't, but I could have the same people on it, because they're the kind of people that are like me. They're like, okay, pivot again. Okay, I'm learning this, or I have this going on in my life. I actually don't want a rental salon anymore, pivoting into a suite. Like I'm not ever at a loss for material, because the kind of people I'm drawn to are people that kind of keep pushing the envelope, and as they learn about themselves and as they grow, they're like, nah, this doesn't serve me. I'm not going to stay here stuck. So it's been cool, and it's been awesome to like see the evolution of everyone I have on my show, and then to see that it creates a connection for other people. So someone will be like, someone has a franchise location for their business, and someone connected with them through She Makes Waves, and she opened a franchise in Memphis. And it's like, holy shit, I made something that connected those two people. And it's kind of happening with my coaching too, because realizing that like I'm in Chicago, if I coach someone in Chicago who wants to make a move, well, I know all these salons. So I actually feel like part of it's like, it's all coming full circle, but it's like letting go and being okay with the things that you might lose in the process, because like it's setting my heart on fire to be like, I could actually match make salon owners and stylists and get paid for it.
Maybe that's your next, matchmaking service.
Yeah. It's actually
um,
part of the bundle.
yeah, for the bundle. Just call 1-900 and you can
Yeah.
start at now. I love that. That's so cool. Because what I'm hearing, like how you're talking about, there's people out there that you can kind of get starstruck by and you can really admire, and then you can work with them and be like, feel so defeated afterwards. And that whole like top of the mountain you thing where you were saying like some people will, like a true leader will say, come alongside me, let's do this together. Where there's a lot of people who confuse leadership as I'm on top, you're beneath me, and I'll help you, but I can only help you so far because there's no way I'm letting you surpass me. I got to keep the power. And even just before we started recording this, I messaged you about a quote on Instagram, how like there's that quote about like no one above you will ever, how does it go? The one that,
Oh, no one doing more than you will criticize you. It's people that aren't following their own dreams that want to like take it out on you.
yeah. And then I was like, my little add on to it is like, but sometimes people will criticize you that are above you if they feel threatened by you because they want to keep you small. But the energy I get from you and what I hear from you is like, you just want to elevate everyone. And you're like, let's all link arms and like Red Rover the shit out of this industry together.
Yeah.
Do you play
No.
Red Rover growing up? Does that make
Yeah, I
sense?
did.
Okay. I was like, is that a universal thing?
Too. So wish I had some more people to call over. But yeah,
But that's what I feel like our industry is lacking is and is getting better at is like that actual community of like we have to link arms and we have to take steps forward together, and which means we need to be on the same level with each other.
yeah. And I think staying in your own lane, no one's going to want to watch you copy them. So that's the other thing too. It's like, let's not be easy prey for people. Like use your own content, use your own experiences because your experiences no one else has had, like you can have common threads with people, you can have similar clients, all of those things. But if you come at it from an authentic place of really truly just being who you are, then I think that the right people will really come alongside you. But yeah, for me, I want to leave this industry better than I found it. And I just think it has so far to go.
Yeah, I love that. So, what is She Net's worth? Tell me about
Yeah,
that.
so when I was thinking I wanted to make a course and like think about like, okay, how do I bottle up what I've done? Because even what you were saying, like, well, what does someone do? It's like, I kind of, as you're asking it, I'm like, fuck, what am I going to say? Like, what do you do? I mean, your life's better. What's my magic bullet, like go on a nature walk thing gonna do for anyone? But I
Just go
so
for a walk.
right,
That's
go through a
just
nature.
to wrap this episode up,
Yeah.
basically.
Right. So that's why I decided to make a course that I was like, it's so much more than that, but like that's part of it. And
Mhm.
so I decided like, well, She Makes Waves is already like, it made sense to me. It's like people are like making waves and like not following the tide and just like saying like, I'm here and I'm gonna be myself and it's gonna make some splashes and you're gonna get wet. And if you don't like it, sorry, I'm making waves. And that's what
I
I'm
love
here to
that.
do. So She Net's worth was like, okay, well, what's underneath all of it that actually in my career and life? Because I've taken all the balayage classes, I've taken all the cutting classes, I've gone to tons of things. What has been the number one thing that had to happen? It's I had to believe in myself and I had to find my worth. And I think that
Mhm.
it happened with a bunch of things, it's like psychics, things like that, journals, all these things. But at the end of the day, like I didn't, if I'm going to get the life I believe I deserve. And so really what I feel like people need to do is what I did is just like work on yourself and value yourself. And it sounds so like, like buzzwordy to talk about, but it really is the single most transformative thing in my life besides having the pain. The transformation of it is like letting the pain change you, but also realizing that you had value and getting curious and not criticizing yourself, but getting genuine curiosity. And I think that, it's been really cool is with working with you is that I kind of was like at this place with the course where like, I was like, oh, I don't want to sound salesy and marketed and be like in people's faces. And then the kind of the crazy thing is I bring on my first 2 clients, while working with you. And the number one thing I think people need is their self-worth. Like, and so how do you help people with that? It's like, fuck, I have this course I made that, I hadn't really sold. And it kind of just was like, oh my gosh, if you let yourself integrate things together, if you're willing to wait, if you're willing not to quit, but to rest, it all can kind of come together. And I think like, for me, I'm like, oh my God, my course doesn't maybe sell 1 million courses, but when you do coaching with me, you need to take that as a prereq. And then if you want to buy the course, that's cool. But I think what I've learned from with you is that like looking over at the left and being like, well, that person just sells courses. Is that what I should be doing? It's like, no. You got to find your sweet spot. And that's what I feel really excited about, is finding the spot that I feel like I'm most in my lane, but stretching myself. It feels like it is having a course, but it's not having a course that I'm like, launches tomorrow. And maybe that'll change, but I think that it feels really just like me and honest, the way that it's kind of coming together.
This is really embarrassing. Well, I don't know if it's embarrassing to admit. Are you into country music at all?
Yeah, I'm a huge country girl.
Okay, sweet. I'm from the prairies in Canada. And yesterday I wasn't feeling well, so I watched the whole Garth Brooks documentary.
I'm going to watch that.
It's so good. So good. So it's like a 2-parter. It's like 4 hours or something. But he says everything in life, and he uses, like, if you guys are watching this, he's like, everything that's a blessing is a curse, and everything that's a curse is a blessing. And he just like walks through his whole career. And like, if you know a bit about his story, like he was massive. He became like number one, like bigger than any pop or rock or anything like that around the whole world. And then retired to be a good dad and went through a divorce and then like married Trisha Yearwood, and it's a whole thing. But the whole, like, everything that's a blessing has its curse, and everything that's a curse has its blessing. And I feel like our careers are very parallel in a lot of ways, and our lives. But we're not allowing the hiccups and the times that we've fallen down and the times that we've been kicked keep us down. We're using them as like springboards to be like, we can live the life that we want and have a better life. And I don't know if it's coincidental, but the picture behind you, I'm assuming, is in an ocean where there would be waves. Yeah. Is that on purpose? She makes waves?
I didn't even have the idea when I got it. So
that's maybe cool.
In the stars long before.
What's your star sign? What's your zodiac sign?
Oh, I'm a Cancer.
Oh, so I'm a Taurus, but like rising Cancer or something like that. So that's probably why.
Yeah.
But I know that the ocean is really healing for me. Do you feel that way as well? It's like something about the water.
Yeah.
Anyway, so going way off on a tangent.
No, I love what you just said. And as you were saying it, I was thinking about how the only thing that I think sounds worse than like hitting the concrete again, because, life happens and you kind of go, I kind of grew up thinking like my parents got divorced. That was the hard spot I was going to hit. I'm smooth sailing from here, which makes the concrete even harder when you fall. Mm-hmm. But the only thing I think that sounds worse is having this shiny career, never trying anything, and just letting the self-doubt of it, because everyone has self-doubt. But the thing that scares me the most, the thing that would be my worst nightmare, is kind of the opposite of what I've done, which is to be standing still, not making any mistakes, and getting fucking nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. My biggest motivation is the fear of looking back one day and going, I wish I would have tried. I wish I would have just tried. And like knowing, sorry.
I was gonna say, that's why, like, when I was talking to you before we started working together and, haven't announced it, but I'm pregnant, and saying to you.
That's like the most anticlimactic quick announcement. You're like, I'm pregnant. Okay.
I prefer to do it. But when I said to you, I'm like, I don't know, like, part of me wants to do this, like, coaching thing and like do this, and like that it's in my heart, and then the other part of me is like, I think I'm fine at the park. I'll just like be a mom at the park. Yeah. And you were like, I think you're trying to talk yourself into that. And I was like, I am. I want to go to the park with my kid. I'm not a monster, but I feel like just being like, I want more than that, or I want, and I think that we can kind of get our brains, like, if Dawn, you had said to me, well, I mean, being a mom is a big job, and you might want to just focus on that. That would have put a seed of doubt in my mind. And I think that the person that's standing still around a bunch of people that are standing still is going to say, I have this idea. And then the person next to them is going to be like, is that really smart? And then you're like, I'm vulnerable. No, it's not. I'm going to stay where I'm at. And
Like, don't ask advice from people who aren't taking the same leaps as you.
You have to tuck your dream in your back pocket, let them talk about what they're talking about. But I feel like that's one thing in my life. I've let people get in my ear that don't have aspirations I have, or haven't done what I want to do.
When I feel like we could just talk for hours. When I moved my whole life at 31 years old, I like sold my house, I packed up my business, and I moved a 6-hour drive away where I knew no one, and everyone thought I was nuts. People around me were like, what are you doing? Like, you have a over six-figure business. Like, you've got a great house that you're paying down. Like, you're settling down. You're in your 30s, done. And I was like, but I know there's more waiting on the other side. And I know I don't know what, like, I got here and I literally had no place to work. I was like, maybe I should go. Everyone's like, you should go be an employee again. Like, you can't start from scratch in a city where you know no one. I was like, right. And then within 12 weeks, I was booked months in advance from the basement of my suburbia home with strangers coming to my house. Like, I'm resourceful as fuck. But I'm glad that I didn't listen to people. And I think that's the thing is like, and what I hear about your story, and the cool thing that I think that we're very similar with is our happiness is really important to us. And we're resourceful. So we know that we can pick ourselves back up if we fall down. And the biggest thing for me learning was like, it's not the fear of failing that I'm scared of. I convinced myself it's the fear of failing. It's the fear of being embarrassed. That's like a huge one for me, is like, what will people say if this all fails?
Yeah.
Does that resound with you?
Well, I think that for me, I heard a quote recently that I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. Like, I always know what I'm losing, and I never actually know what I'm going to gain. And I think that you can look at, like kind of like nostalgia. You look at the part of it that you loved and you're like, but I'm going to miss this. And you like skim over all the shitty parts of like why you're leaving where you're leaving, or, why you're ending what you're ending. But you, honest to God, never know what's on the other side of it. And like, if you even can look back at things anyone can in their life that didn't go the way they thought they wanted them to, and you're like, holy crap, I would have never known I would have met that person. I would have done that. And I think that that's actually for me kind of what has held me back, is I always know what I'm losing, and I always overvalue kind of other people's part in my journey. So when I go to leave, I think like, well, who am I going to be if it's just me? And that's why I think that now I believe in myself, because when it was just me, like, well, things got a lot better. Stopped putting all my eggs in other people's baskets.
Would you say you were a codependent person before?
I would say unknowingly, yes. And I would say like, I didn't know that I wasn't even happy. And that's part of why She Makes Waves is like, I'm planting seeds with people. Like, you don't have to I'm just planting a seed with you. Like, if you resonate with something I'm saying, like maybe there's something there under the surface. Maybe there's something in your life that you're like, yeah, that's just how everyone feels. I used to say that to myself too. Like, so I think I just kind of wanted to be this little, like, I got the whisper to do it, but then I also feel like I want to like just plant a little seed. Like, no one tipped me off that this was the whole thing was not gonna be what served me. And it's all been part of my journey, and it's a good thing because it allows me to want to share it. Had someone planted a seed with me, I'd been like, oh cool, I'll hang a left here, and I would have kept going on my way. And I think that because of how it's happened, I feel like I just want to do that for other people. I don't want to like jar people awake. I want to just leave you with a little seed of like, maybe the way I'm doing things, maybe I'm working too hard. Maybe everyone around me is underperforming because I'm over delivering. And I think that that's something I did my whole life. I just was like, how do I create value? So I'm overperforming. Everyone in my life is underperforming. It's going to be hard for some of them to hear that, but it's just the reality.
I put so much value in, I didn't have value in myself. So I put value in what I could give. Like I always say, like I was an over highlighter. And so I didn't focus on the outcome someone wanted. I focused on how many foils I'd put in their hair because they were paying me, like the amount of foils equaled how much they were paying me. And to the point, like I didn't always give them the hair they wanted because I was like, oh, I need to put more foils in because they're paying me for more foils. And like that shift of like, no, they're paying me for an outcome. Or like when the client would be like, how come this piece isn't in a foil? I used to be like, oh, I'll put it in one, rather than being like, so there's a strategic reason why how I've placed these in your hair, but I didn't have that confidence or that worth to be able to do that. And then also there's like, when you were saying that, it's like living out your purpose is so fulfilling, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't take work. Right. And like, I think the one thing I've seen over the last few weeks of working with you is that you are willing to put in the work because the payoff is so worth it. Like you know, I've been like, what about this? And then you're like, okay, so I just spent 4 hours and did it. And it's like, whoa, like you're so focused because you know what you want, because you know what makes you happy. And I think there's lots of people that think the cookie cutter, like if I just like work 9 to 5, then I'll be happy. And they're really actually not happy in their life. Yeah. And so expand on that for me. Like you probably work harder than you've ever worked before, but your contentment level.
Yeah, it's different for me because I've always thought of like only time I'm working is when I'm in the salon, like when I'm with clients. And so like doing website stuff or working on something like that, it's just like, and the podcast over the last year of working on it, that's showed me like you can work on something that's not going to have like a tangible payoff, but you know, in the short term, like my podcast has had so many, I feel like I've been paid in so many ways from my podcast. And I think we have to redefine what really being compensated for our time looks like. Because for me, the relationships, the friendships, the connections, the opportunities, they haven't come out of doing more hair. And they come from having a passion project or putting your heart into something and having it resonate with people. And there's value in that. But if I said, well, it doesn't make me money because that's how I used to be, short-sighted and wanting to be safe. And I think we can use our clients as pacifiers because we're scared like of all the things you were saying. And so for me, I think, I can't remember the question now. It was,
do you work harder now and actually are more content? Because like lots of times I know in my life, like I was like working less, which like I do believe in balance and like, you know, outsourcing things and not working yourself into the ground. But there's like a different shift in like when you really want something and you have a goal, the work isn't as much work. But a lot of people are falling out of love with their work because they don't have the boundaries. They're not communicating clearly. And so when you have the right things in place, you actually work harder because you want to.
Yeah, no, I think the thing that you've helped me with is looking at it differently. So if the current business you have is going to be something that you implement, you use as you create something else, then you need to have a strategic plan around how you're going to work in your current business to open up space and create time to work on the business you want to have. And that's something that was cool to me with working with you, but also it's what excites me about helping other people, because I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to reverse engineer this, because if you know where you want to go, it's less about like, okay, well, work those 5 days. It's like, no, strategically make enough money in those days, work these strategic days and then you're like, wow, look at these open, like I'm looking at like a salon schedule. And it's like, you know, you've got 4 days open. It's like, those are the days that you can train your clients if you want to be a physical therapist or, you know, like I feel like it's exciting to me to think about how you can create space in your schedule, because I think a lot of us get bogged down with our old schedules trying to create a new life.
Mm-hmm. And that whole, like, I even thinking about scheduling, like I hear so many people be like, well, I don't want to get online scheduling because then I'm going to have weird gaps. And I'm like, but how much time are you spending scheduling people in that's actually work that doesn't pay you? And inside my program, Rock Your Business, I walk people through how to not have those gaps in their online schedule, but people don't count the hours they're working outside of the salon. And like in the grocery store, getting the text and like your mind starting to go into anxiety, or being annoyed for the next 45 minutes that your client texted you at 10 o'clock at night when you're grocery shopping, or, you know, we don't realize that puts us into that stress mode of work again.
And even an example of that is with this pandemic. I'm like, I'm not double booking clients. Well, I was only ever double booking clients because I was accommodating them. And so now that I'm seeing one person at a time, I've made my pricing reflect what my pricing should be. I see 4 people a day. I'm actually really, really enjoying what I do more than ever, even with a mask on and a sore throat. So like, I feel like just really reevaluating and using the things in life that kind of give you some breathing room to be like, okay, like now that I can only see one person at a time, okay, well, how does my pricing need to look? And then with the online scheduler, it's like, now that I'm not double booking, I used to always say I'm double booking, so people need help with the online scheduler to sandwich appointments. Well, that was a crutch. Those people could have done it by themselves. And now I'm shedding clients and I'm having fewer clients because the ones that are going to stay with me are going to be the kind of people that can go online and book a regular appointment. If they need mommy here to help them get scheduled, I'm probably not the right fit for them, looking at my life and the trajectory and where I want it to go and being like, bless you, thank you for your part of my journey, but I'm headed in a new part of my journey. And so I know I'm not going to be the same. And if that's what you're looking for, like, it's you're out, wave your white flag,
Yeah.
call it. I'm not her anymore.
And I love that because that's something I've gone through as well. And it's like, once you know that you yourself as a person are valuable and worthy of it, you know that you're not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. And that someone deciding to go somewhere else doesn't devalue who you are. And when I moved, I guess it'll be almost 6 years ago now, when I moved to Calgary and started over, I told myself, I'm no longer going to sacrifice my dreams and goals for my career and my life out of fear of someone being upset with me. And I have turned over my clientele 4 times in those 6 years because I'm like, I'm not being scared of making changes. When I know I need to when it's time to make a schedule change, or when I know it's time to do a price increase, I'm going to do it. And like, yeah, it's going to scare the shit out of me. And the biggest one was last February. And I like turned over a ton of my clients because I did a really big price increase, but I stopped double booking and I added value and I created more quality, and my business didn't suffer at all. My ego did, because I was like, oh, that person I thought for sure would totally stay.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but because you develop those relationships, but then you develop new relationships that come in its place. And I think that's what I love seeing about you is like, I hate when people use the word fearlessly doing something because it looks fearless. Yeah, we're like pooping our pants doing it.
Yeah.
But we're not going to let the fear. Have you read Big Magic?
Yes.
Where she talks about like fear, stop waiting for fear to go away. It's never going to go away, but it gets to be in the back seat of the car. It doesn't like drive. It doesn't give directions. It doesn't touch the radio. So the more you can just be like, okay, fear's present. It's going to be here, but I'm going to make my decision anyway.
Yeah. And I think it gets easier to make those scary decisions because they never stop being scary, but you're like, that didn't kill me. Okay. Going down the road, got another change I'm making. I almost feel like, like people are not surprised by changes I make anymore. And even it's funny, as I've been telling like a few of my clients that I'm pregnant, they're like, what? You've never told us you wanted kids. I had no idea. And it's just interesting how, like you're going to always be misunderstood. And I think that that's the thing that I've continued to try and get better at, because it's bothered me when I feel misunderstood by people. But I've just learned to accept that as I continue to grow, as I continue to go in my own life, that I will have to just get comfortable with people misunderstanding my motives, my actions, and then I've just got to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Because life is just one big misunderstanding.
Is that a quote you made up? Or
it just came out of my mouth. That sounds really like wah, wah, wah.
That would explain a lot of it.
But truly at the end of the day, we cannot, because I see so many hairstylists who don't even realize that they're control freaks, but do everything in craving control, controlling how people perceive them, controlling how people receive what they say. And the best way to be in control of everything is to abandon yourself and try to make everyone else happy. But you really don't. And so the sacrifice is that you have to be so confident in yourself that you don't care if someone misunderstands you. You know what you mean, you know what your intentions are, and you're able to be humble enough to be like, oh, that wasn't my intention, but I'm so sorry. Or I see, like those sorts of things. And it's been a huge growing curve for me. But yeah, like people always misunderstand you.
Yeah. And I think that what you said about the keeping things, like having so much control, like when we hold on to things so tightly, we don't allow them to be what we actually want. Like I wanted to work with people, but like in the rental scenario, I could have never done it if I had the control issues or wanting like and had like this need to be like a very like in-demand colorist. Like I would have been in the salon, like walking over my renter all the time, being like, oh, Jenny, I'm going to need this chair. I'm going to need this chair. I'm going to need you to move. Yeah, no, I know. Got another one coming in. Like I would have gotten in my way of what I ultimately wanted. And I think that goes back to like getting to know yourself. What do you actually want? And then like figure and like handle your shit and learn about yourself and get healthier so that you don't actually like, what's the word? Like you don't actually like, like dismantle it as you're trying to make it. Because I think we sabotage ourselves because we're too scared. We haven't done the work on ourselves. It's easier to blame your renter. It's easier to blame everyone else. But like, I have a dream renter, but like 2 years ago, she would have thought I was a maniac.
Yeah. Or like how many people don't pursue the things they want because of their ego? Like whether like they're scared of being humiliated or embarrassed, or their ego's getting pumped so much where they're at that being a new person somewhere scares the shit out of them. So I'll stay top dog here and play it safe when I really want to be here, but I'm too scared to have to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like I see, and I know I've been there.
Yeah. And like, honestly, not realizing you have a relationship to your ego and that you actually have one. I would say if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't have an ego, you might want to buckle up, have a seat, get a straight jacket ready. Cause I had one and I didn't know. So,
Yeah. And ego doesn't have to be bad. I think we associate it with something bad and realizing like we all have like ego is important.
Yes. But if it keeps you working Saturdays, cause you're like, what's she going to do when I don't work Saturdays? Like, wow.
Yeah. This is my favorite story to tell is like when like you get into this unconscious dance, and this is like a whole nother analogy I could do for like 20 minutes, but we get into this unconscious dance with our clients. And so they know that they stroke our ego like, oh, you don't have anything, like, oh, sorry, I'm fully booked in 6 weeks. Oh, really? But like, you're the only one that knows how to do my hair. And like in the back of your head, you're like, there's so many freaking awesome, talented stylists out there, but you're like, I know I am the only one that can do your hair. And it feels so good because it validates every insecurity within us that we're not enough. They're just telling us we're the only. And so you're like, oh, you know what? I can squeeze you in. And they like, your clients like unconsciously know how to manipulate you. It's not malicious. It's not, I think, intentional. They just know if I stroke her ego, she feels good, she'll find a way to fit me in. And that's like, that was a really like, anytime I used to get frustrated with my clients, I had this huge aha moment where I was just frustrated with myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hard pill to swallow. And I'm riding the coattails of this pandemic hard. Like, I'm like, oh, the sanitation. I mean, I'm trying to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And if you have to do stuff like that, then do it. Like if it helps you, I think, but like, yeah, I'm with you. Like, just like not being able, there was a time where I couldn't handle a pause. If someone paused and was like 6 weeks, oh, I need to be here in 3. I'd be like, you need to be here in 3. Like now I'm like, yeah, so I don't have anything in 3 weeks. Let's see. I can put you on a wait list.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay with a pause. That's a power thing. That's a confidence thing. And I say there's just a power in a pause. And even if someone says something rude to you, or I would just stare at them for a little while. I was just gonna say
make eye contact.
You just give it time to kind of sit there and let it just sit.
Yeah. I love that you say that because I always say like count one time I had this conversation with a client where she's like, wow, I've never paid this much for my hair before. And like my knee-jerk reaction was to be like, oh, and like apologize or like, discount. But I was like, no, just be quiet. And I just like was quiet. And she's like, but I've never loved my hair as much. And I was like, how often do we make an assumption that someone's asking for something when they're just making a statement? And learning to be quiet in those moments, like that power and pause I've never heard it articulated that way, but like learn to just be quiet in the discomfort. And like, I've even had students be like, pardon me?
People surprise you. I feel like, like people, you have had this back to like most of life's a misunderstanding. Like we assume a lot of stuff. And so like by giving it space to be what it is, people move on more quickly, or you can be like, wow, I really connect with this person. I would never have known that had I not kept my mouth shut long enough to hear her give me that compliment after she digested the price.
Yeah. Yeah. And she was just making a statement, but we project our insecurities onto a scenario. Like, okay, like, oh, I charged her over $500. She just said she's never paid this much before. She's clearly telling me that it's not worth it, when that's just a made up story. And lots of times, yeah, people are digesting, like, allow there to be a pause, but because we're kind of hyped up internally, like our engine's revving, but we still have the foot on the brake, but we're pressing the gas. And then we just like take our foot off the brake and just like bulldoze them, where it's like deep breath. Like, even I have a smoothie here right now, but like if you're so uncomfortable with that pause, the best thing, and this is how they coach actors and like people getting interviewed, is like, if you don't know what to say or you're surprised by a question, just take a sip. And it like shows, like, no one's waiting for an answer from you when you're taking a sip. They see that you're taking a sip and you're just using it as like a delay tactic to think or to force yourself to be quiet.
Yeah, no, as you were saying that, I'm thinking about like hairstylists, they're seeing so many people. And I know I was just like trying to close deals. Like, I'm like, next person's here, let's shut her down. Yeah, I come in on my sister's birthday. We were going to fly somewhere, but I'll find another flight. I'll go late. And just like, all right, are we done? Are we done? Cool. All right. You can step on in. And I feel like, you know, like, to me, when I look back at that, to me, that was a symptom of being overextended in general. Mm-hmm. And like, it wasn't that I needed to learn how to pause. It was I needed to see fewer people. Like, not saying everyone needs to do that, but like, sometimes what the thing you're struggling with is a symptom of something bigger.
Mm-hmm. It's peeling back the onion. Like, I wasn't scared about losing clients. I remember talking with Nick, my boyfriend, and when I was doing this big price increase, he's like, so what are you, like, let's talk about this. What are you scared of? And I'm like, well, what if all my clients leave? And he's like, okay, so what if they all leave? And I was like, right, so my business will crumble. And he's like, okay, so your business crumbles. He's like, you're resourceful. You've started your business over how many times? Like, in your 19 years, how many places have you lived all over the world? You've built a new clientele. So it's not that you can't. So what's the real fear? And I was like, shit. I was like, the fear is that I'll be embarrassed. If I increase my prices and all my clients leave and my business crumbles, it's not that I don't know how to start over. It's that they'll all have to watch me start over. And they'll, you know, some people will be like, look, she raised her prices and that didn't go over so well. And it's not, and it was a moment with my therapist once when I was talking about something else. I was like having this, like, I don't know if you've ever done EMDR. Have you ever done EMDR?
No, but I think it's cool.
So EMDR, anyone that's listening in, it's like kind of a hypnosis type thing. I did it a couple of times and then I was like, hell no, not anymore. It took me to a place I was really uncomfortable with. Clearly I have to do some more work. But anyway, I like was back in this moment of being a 5-year-old kid in the back of our station wagon, crying, and and no shade on my family at all, but my dad telling me to stop crying, and I couldn't. And I was like, that, like, as a little kid, you're like, you know, when you can't catch your breath, and he's like, stop. And I had my face in my hands. And I remember my mom turned around looking at me and both my brothers looking at me and feeling humiliated. And when my therapist was like, humiliation, I just, like, the gates were open and I lost it. And I was like, yeah, it's like seeing people looking at me while I'm feeling very vulnerable is so scary. And that's like, it was hard to admit, but that is at the core of my fear. It's not about my business failing. It's not about all this stuff. It's having people look at me when I'm at my most vulnerable and seeing me at my most vulnerable.
Yeah, that's deep. And I love that, because I've always been like, I don't want people to think I look stupid. It's similar, you know, like, you know, having grown up with a learning disability, I never felt like I was smart. So it's funny. I was saying to my sister the other day, I was like, it's okay if your kids grow up thinking they're dumb. Look at me. I thought I was dumb my whole life. It's been a real fuel, and I got healthy, and it's worked out.
But I graduated with a 72 average.
Right. Like, but it's like, it made me want to work really hard. But you're right. Like, I mean, even I sent an email out during the coronavirus thing, and the way that I worded it, people thought I was closing my business. And that feeling came up for me. Like, I'm like, oh, I look so dumb right now. And then I'm like, then the healthy Lindsay said, you know, this is a confusing time. Half the people read it that way. Half the people didn't. You know what? Who cares?
Yeah.
But there's that little voice in the back of my head doing the same thing. Like, you're dumb. Like, you worded an email really poorly. And, you know, you have those 3 clients that are like, yeah, your grammar. And it's like, if you looked on,
get me started.
on emails from me, she's out. Just don't worry about her. Gave her the boot.
So grammar is like a huge insecurity because I'm terrible at grammar and I do not proofread stuff. So with autocorrect, Like, oh, I think we even actually had one of those where you're like, this actually, and I didn't even know that I had made a mistake in the correspondence that we had. Like,
Oh, but I don't care because I'm not someone who's a grammar police. Those people are annoying.
And so I had this one post like over a year ago, like, I don't know, quote unquote, go viral. Like it got massive amounts of likes, more than I'm used to on Instagram. And someone shared it. And she said that she got a message from someone saying, I can't even read it because of the apostrophe missing. Or I think it was like, because I wrote Y-O-U-R instead of Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. And I know the difference, but I write it. Yeah. And I was like, really, if someone can't, that's where it's like, I'm not going to be for everyone. Not everyone's going to like me. Like you can be hugely successful and suck at spelling and grammar. I'll show you that way. If you struggle with that, because I'm not, I joke that it's part of my brand.
Yeah. Well, and it's like what you want to share is more important than getting it 100% right every time. Mm-hmm. Because it's like the content and your heart comes through, and the people that love you, they're not like, no one should be coming to me because they like my grammar. And if they are,
teach me how to open a salon, because that apostrophe was really well placed.
Right. Like even like I feel like a year into it, someone's like, you've got cancellation spelled wrong on your website. It's like, whatever. I mean, I fix it when I know, but 2 L's, that's sneaky.
You're like, I swear to God, that's how you spell it. And then you Google it and you're like, damn it, I've been spelling it wrong the whole life.
Correct spelling correctly. I'm like, I don't even know if that looks right.
Half the time when I write a word out, I'm like, that's not right. That's not right. And then it is. And I'm like, oh, why does it look weird? Do you ever have that with words where like they just
That's the story of my life. So that's why you might be seeing some weird stuff.
Well, I feel like we can keep talking forever, but I think people should just go and check you out. So you have your podcast, She Makes Waves, as well as you have a whole booklet that people can download for free. Share a little bit about that. Yeah.
So the She Nets Worth workbook is a lot of what we had talked about, like the journey that I've been on. And so it's a free downloadable workbook on my website that you can just kind of start going through some of the things that I've done in my life to kind of value myself and find myself. And then from that place, create a life that's in alignment with who that actually is. So there's even a part in it where it's like, introduce yourself to yourself, because I think a lot of us can tell you what our client loves to drink, but like can't set a password like me with Comcast because I can't tell them my favorite color or my favorite food, and it sounds stupid, but it's really true and it really happened. So download that workbook and just like start kind of going on a discovery journey with yourself.
I love that. So they can find that at linmaystudio.com, right?
Correct. Yep.
Awesome. And then where can they connect with you on social media?
So I'm at Lynn May Studio on Instagram, and then also She Makes Waves podcast. And I check both of them.
Awesome. Well, Lindsay, this was so awesome to have you on the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. I love doing this.
If you could sum up this whole conversation in 2 sentences to paraphrase it to someone that you want them to walk away with, what would you say to them in 2 or 3 sentences?
Slow down to figure out who you are so you can create a life that's living from that place.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. Okay, was that not like the most fun episode ever? I think I should have Lindsay back. What do you say? Shoot me a DM on Instagram. Let me know if you think we should have Lindsay back. I think she fits in with this community. She gets us. She knows. She literally makes waves. Okay, there was my dorky humor coming out. Anyway, I had so much fun having her on this podcast. I definitely want you guys to go reach out to her on Instagram. Let her know you heard her episode here. Go, if you're not already subscribed to She Makes Waves, go subscribe. It's amazing. Go creep her beautiful website, linmaystudio.com. And if you're interested in getting coached by me or one of my programs, go ahead and check out dawnbradley.com. You can see all the things I offer there. I talked a little bit about my Rock Your Business program. I also do offer one-on-one coaching if that's something you're into as well. But Lindsay, oh my goodness, what an action taker. I have loved and been working with her and been so honored to be alongside her in this journey of her literally making waves. Like how her podcast is so appropriately named. She is amazing and an inspiration, and I'm so glad you guys got to connect with her here. Thank you, Lindsay, for being on the podcast. I had such a blast. I cannot wait till our next conversation. All right, guys, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, I would love if you left a review, share with your friends, like, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on iTunes, if you're on Spotify, wherever you are. Thank you for being here with me right now. Have an awesome week, and I'll talk to you next week.